Hey guys, ModzLink here with another tutorial. Today I will be showing you guys how to change the SIM card slot on a OnePlus One. So everything that you'll need to do this is right here. So first off, you're obviously going to need your phone that has a broken SIM card slot. Typically that happens when you're trying to eject the SIM card or take this cover off and you're using this tool. This is the SIM card ejector tool that OnePlus One gives you. Some people go and try and eject the SIM card slot like that, and then they try to take this back cover off and they insert this in here, and what happens is this gets stuck on the pins and you end up ripping the pins out. Or you can damage the pins some other way. Either way, the pins are broken inside the SIM card slot, and so your SIM card is no longer detected when you put it in. So I'll be showing you guys how to fix that. So get your phone, and the next thing you're going to need is a small electronic screwdriver set like this one. You're obviously going to need your SIM card ejector tool. You will need a hot air gun like this, or a heat gun. You do have to regulate the temperature, so don't use any heat gun or you might just fry your phone. So you need one of these, preferably a professional one like this. You'll also need a soldering iron with a very fine tip, if I can show you that. So yeah, very fine tip. You may also need rubbing alcohol and Q-tips to clean up after you're done. You'll definitely need tweezers to be able to line things up properly, and also to help you remove the old SIM tray. You'll need flux to help you with the solder. These parts are very small, so flux really counts with this repair, so make sure you have flux. Don't even attempt this repair if you don't have flux. You will also need a replacement SIM card tray. You can get one of these on the ModzLink store if you would like to try this repair yourself, although it is a pretty risky repair, so I would suggest you leave it to the professionals. I also do offer this service, so if you need your SIM card replaced, just send an email to sales@modzlink.com. You'll also need a SIM card, obviously, to test out the phone once you're done. You'll need solder to put the new tray back on the phone. If you run into issues, it's also good to have a very thin wire like this so you can do repairs. Hopefully you don't have to do that, but if you do, just keep that in mind. And this is also very handy if you don't have someone helping you. So you can use this to hold the motherboard so you can heat it up and then remove the old SIM tray. But anyways, let's go ahead and clean this up and get started here. Alright, so we'll start off by disassembling the phone. First off, you'll need your SIM card ejector tool, and simply eject the tray. Then set that aside. Once you have the tray out, you should be able to get your fingernail right under the tray and just run your fingernail down the length of the phone. And once you've gone all the way around, this shell should unsnap and you should have access to the rest of the phone. So set this aside. You can use it to hold your parts. And then we need to remove the screws. So there's 5 hidden screws. Let me flip this around so you guys can see. There's one here, one here, one here, and one right there, and one right there. And you can use your tweezers to just poke at these rubber pads, and you should be able to get them out without a problem. For this particular repair, you don't need to remove the bottom, you simply need to remove the top. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I've got those 3 covers there, and then I'm going to use my screwdriver here, and this uses a size 0 bit, and you simply remove all these screws. So there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 screws total, 3 on each side, and then the triangle in the middle. Alright, once you have all those screws removed, just set those aside. They're all the same size, so shouldn't matter if you mix them up. Next, we need to remove this top cover here. There's a couple of ways. There's a little nick right here where you can stick your tweezers in and get it out, or you can simply use the headphone jack and just pry up. Don't stick your tweezers too far in, just barely on the edge, and pry up, and it should come out. And there you could hear it unsnap. If this is the first time you've disassembled your phone, do this part very, very carefully, because typically what happens is the battery ribbon gets stuck, and so you need to open it like this and use your tweezers to get this ribbon cable unstuck. Let me show you that up close. So see that ribbon cable right there? Alright, so now that that's unstuck, we can remove this without a problem. And at this point, I would suggest you unsnap all these ribbons here. So be sure to remove the battery ribbon first. That way there's no power flowing through the motherboard. And then you can remove the other ribbons. So once you've got that one off, you should be safe to not short anything out, and then you can remove these other ones with your tweezers. So there's those there, and then there's one big one up top. Alright, and then you need to pry right behind these buttons here without damaging them. And just barely get underneath them. And then you can run this up alongside. And this is the part where people mess up the most, so they're not very careful with this ribbon. This ribbon is extremely fragile right there, especially right there at the joint. So be careful with that ribbon not to break it. If you do break it, that's when this comes in handy and you can patch it up. And then do the same thing on the other side with the power button. Kind of awkward holding it this way. Alright, once you've got that done, you should be able to, well, first off we'll want to remove the camera. So if you pry under here, should be able to remove the camera. That's the back camera. Alright, now after you've removed those ribbons and the camera and unsnapped everything, there is one more screw right here. and this is a different size screw, so this is a tad bit smaller than the other ones. Once you have done that, you should be able to pry on this a little so it's out of the way. Make sure the buttons are clear so they're not going to get snagged or anything like that. And then once you've made sure of that, pry up on this and start lifting from this corner. And as you're lifting, you're going to have to clear these ribbons out of the way, so just lift these up and out. Now be very, very, very careful when you're doing this. Lift it up very slowly, and then remember on this corner there is a hidden cable on the back, so that's where you need to be careful. And once you've lifted the motherboard like this or so, you should be able to get your tweezers in there and undo this cable in the back. Alright, so once you've undone that cable, you should have your motherboard like this. And then we need to remove this SIM tray and replace it with the new one. Alright, so at this point go ahead and set your phone aside, and we basically just need the motherboard. And this is where it becomes kind of difficult. So let me show you the pins here. Now, as you can tell in there, the back pins are completely broken, the 3 back pins. The 3 first pins in the front are fine, but the back ones are completely broken off. So we need to remove this, and the way to do that is with flux. Lots and lots of flux and lots of heat. So this is where you need this. Now, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, you will definitely need this. This is kapton tape. If you don't have kapton tape, you probably don't even want to try this repair. What this does is it protects the phone or the motherboard from heat. This way we don't melt every single solder point on the motherboard, and we just focus the heat specifically on this area. If you don't use this, then you're going to melt everything on the motherboard. It's going to be a mess and it's not going to work. So make sure to get some of this, and what you do with this is you just wrap it around the whole area that you don't want heated up. So everything here is going to be covered except for this area. But before we put that on, make sure to remove the front facing camera right there, and that is just being held by that little ribbon, so just unsnap it and then wrap the phone up with kapton tape. So there's that. Also, I forgot to mention, right here there's a sensor and there's a rubber part, so you may want to remove that little rubber part just so it doesn't get damaged by the heat. So there's that little rubber piece. So now that we have this all wrapped up with kapton tape, except for that piece. You need to get some flux, and there's multiple solder points. So there's a solder point on this corner here, this corner, the middle, on both sides, the back corners, and then every single pin has its own solder point. So we need to get enough flux on all of those points to be able to take this off. Try not to make a mess, but as you can tell, it's best if you use no clean flux. This way it's not all sticky and messy and gross. Anyways, once you've got that all fluxed up, go ahead and use this to hold it. So we've got that there, and then we need to introduce some heat. So here's my heat gun. This is heated to 300 degrees Celsius. So at this point you need to just apply heat to it, and then get your tweezers and stick them right here underneath this so that you can get this out as soon as it's melted. Apply even heat to all the sides, but mostly the front corners. The front corners are pretty much what's holding everything in place. Alright, so if this isn't lifting off, what I like to do is use my soldering iron and put some leaded solder in there. These devices are typically manufactured in China, and in China, in the factories, they can't use leaded solder for safety reasons. So if we put some leaded solder on here, leaded solder actually melts at a lower temperature than unleaded solder, so it'll be much easier to remove. Alright, so here we go. I've added some leaded solder and more flux, and we'll try it out again. Alright, so here is the old SIM card tray. This one, as you can tell, some of the pins were broken off right there, but sorry I couldn't get that on video. The easiest way to get this thing off is to apply heat right in the middle and let the heat just disperse out to the legs, and then you should be able to remove it without any problems. You do have to be careful, as always, with the phone. It's a small motherboard. It can get very hot very fast, so that's why you want to use a professional heat gun rather than just your standard paint heat gun or anything like that. So anyways, once you have the old SIM tray removed, you need to use your soldering iron to clean up the points. So I'll show you how to do that now. Alright, so basically you just tap this on the points and heat them up, and then apply this new solder to them. This again is leaded solder, so it'll work much better than the unleaded solder that it had before. Alright, so here is the motherboard after cleaning up all the points, and these points here have been pre-tinned, so as you can see they're a little bit bigger. Now I'm just going to go ahead and clean this excess flux off the motherboard, and then we'll put the replacement back on. And to do this, you use the rubbing alcohol. You'll want to get 99%, otherwise you may end up with water on the motherboard, and that's never a good thing. So make sure to use the 99% rubbing alcohol. Alright, so once that's clean, go ahead and get your new SIM card tray, and this one here, as you can tell, has all the pins. So you can see the 6 little golden pins there. Now what I like to do is get some flux after I cleaned up the old flux, and then just put a very small amount on these points. And this way, not only will it help when putting the new tray back on, but it'll also help to hold this new tray while you're soldering it in place. So set it on there, line it up with the pins, and then basically, if you pre-tinned all the points, all you have to do is go in with your soldering iron and tap the points, and then they should melt. Alright, so here is the motherboard. This is back in place, and when you solder this, the only thing you really need to worry about is not soldering this little switch here. So this pushes the SIM card back out, and also the way I like to do it is to line up the tray and then solder the points in the front up here first, just so it's steady, and then solder the points in the back by just sticking the soldering iron in the holes till you hear it just click into place, and then solder the points around the tray. So this is now fitted back in, so we'll go ahead and remove all the tape and put it back together and test it out. So just simply cut it off. And when you remove this tape, the motherboard might be kind of sticky because of the flux, so just clean that up if you need to. So I'm going to clean up the motherboard just a little bit because it is a bit sticky. Alright, so now that that's clean, we'll go ahead and grab the phone here and fit this back in place. Before we do that, remember this little rubber piece that goes right here. And this goes on the light sensor. And we also need to remember the front facing camera. So just snap that back here in place. Inspect your work one last time to make sure everything is okay. And then let's go ahead and fit this in. So the first thing you want to do is get this little antenna cable out of here. So if you want to do this the easy way, you can use one of these little opening tools and get under this side of the battery where it says designed by OnePlus One, and you pry this way, and then you get under this battery and just pry it out like that. So once you've taken the battery out, you grab this little cable. Be careful with it because it is pretty fragile, and then just bend it over like this until you can snap it into place here on the motherboard. Okay, and then once it's snapped in the motherboard, you can rotate the motherboard very slowly and pull this ribbon back. That way it doesn't get in the way. And then just swivel the motherboard in place here. And as always, remember to watch this volume ribbon cable so you don't break it. So once it's like that, you can pretty much just push it in place. Make sure that cable is in there snug, and then just press this down. Make sure there's no ribbons or anything underneath, such as this one up top. And then at this point we can go ahead and get the screws and get the camera. So remember, the screw on the motherboard is the smaller one, so that one goes over here next to the power button. And then once that's in, you can go ahead and snap these ribbons. And then make sure the buttons are flush with the chassis, this metal chassis. Make sure to test them as well. Make sure they still have a little click. If they don't have a click, then you probably heated up the motherboard way too much and messed up the buttons, so you'll have to get a new ribbon. Now get your camera, put that in place here, and make sure to snap the ribbon back in. Put this tape back on, or you can remove it completely. I'm gonna go ahead and remove it completely because it's just kinda getting in the way. Alright, once you have all of that in there, all the ribbons snapped in place, get your battery and put that back in. And then get the top cover, put that on top. And then put all the screws back in place. And then remember to put the little rubber covers back on. And then once you have done that, just put the cover back on. And then turn it on. And test out your new SIM slot and see if it's able to detect it or not. We'll see here in just a second. Alright, so here's the phone fully reassembled, and as you can see up here, it's not detecting a SIM card. So let me go ahead and put this SIM card in there. And with the SIM cards, always remember to put the pins facing towards you, so like this. And here I will show you what it does when I insert it. So there's the SIM card in, and that should change now. As you can tell there, it changed to a little triangle. So now it is detecting a SIM card. So that's it for my tutorial on how to replace a SIM card slot on a OnePlus One. If you guys found that video helpful or informative, please remember to like, comment, favorite, or share the video. Consider subscribing as well. And also remember, if you do have this issue, you can contact sales@modzlink.com if you need your SIM card slot replaced by a professional. But anyways, as always, thanks for watching guys, and I will see you next time.